I've never, I mean, this was a physical experience. It was no dream. It was the most intense thing that's ever happened to me that I can recall in my life, the most frightening thing. I mean, I was 20 at the time, but for the 2 years afterwards, I never slept without a light on in the room. I was terrified of this. And, you know, I kept thinking, you know, what is it? Why is this happening to me? You know, I'm having one of the best times of my life. You know, I'm doing well at school. Everything's okay. I enjoy these people I'm living with. I have a great time living in the mountains. What is it? You know, why did I attract something like this to myself? You know, what is this? What's this bad thing that's attracted? Well, that was the summer. That was about 10 months before I saw this UFO sighting. I moved out of this house within a couple weeks afterwards because I thought, I had no explanation for it. I thought poltergeists, ghosts, something. And I moved to this place out just north of college, still way out in a rural area. And I felt that whole year as if something was watching me and something was following me. And I've never in my life had, I mean, I've gone through stress early, you know, when I was in high school and stuff, and just puberty, anxiety, and stuff like that. But I started having panic attacks every day, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to go crazy. I didn't know what was happening, and I couldn't figure out why I was having these feelings. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack before, or anxiety attack, you know, but I'd never had them before. So to me, I thought something was really wrong with me because I didn't know what they were. And I would try to explain to say, I feel like, you know, sometimes I just had this feeling, and my heart starts to, you know, do funny, and I think I'm going to go crazy. I think I'm going to lose my mind, or I'm going to die, or something's going to happen horrible in just a second. And I don't know why. And people would say, what's wrong with you? It was until later I learned, you know, panic attacks. But it would happen to me a lot, especially when I was driving out in the country at night. And I'd be going down the road, and I would see a light up ahead, like an intersection, or at a farmhouse, there'd be like a mercury vapor lamp on a post or something up in the air. And I'd see the light, and I'd start fixating on it. I'd go, when I get up, you know, I'd be driving along, when I get to that post, something horrible's going to happen. I'm going to lose control of the car, or I'm going to go crazy at the wheel, or I'm going to die suddenly and have a heart attack. Or, you know, I'd get more and more upset, and get closer and closer and closer, and then nothing would happen when I get to the light. And I'd go, why am I doing this to myself? What's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Am I becoming, you know, psychotic? I mean, I kept doing well at school, and I kept functioning. And there were things like at the house. I woke up one morning with blood all over the pillow, and I couldn't find anywhere where there was blood from my ear or nose or anything. And they were like, you know, it was like, I don't know, about 6 or 7 spots of about between the sizes of quarters and $half across the pillow. And I couldn't find red blood anywhere. Sometimes at night there would be knocks on one of the doors, the back door, which was sealed. You know, someone would knock 3 times slightly. And then I would go to the door and say, you know, hello, who is it? And then I'd force the door open, there'd be no one there, and I'd go around to the front door, and I'd be standing in front of the front door, which was in the kitchen. And the door would just start shaking like that. And there'd be no one there because half the door was glass, and I could see right through it, but there was nothing there. And I was beginning to think I was just becoming like paranoid or something, or schizophrenic, and I thought, is this the beginning of how it's like, you know, when you begin to lose it?
Your mind, right?
Yeah, and I was real anxious during this whole year after this experience, and I thought maybe whatever this was pursuing me, perhaps, for some reason, I didn't know. It was after I had moved from there, after the school year in May ended, that I was living in Modesto and working at the theater, that I was on the way home, that I saw this thing in the sky. And I was living in Modesto because it was my idea that I was going to move back to the city, and I did within a month after my sighting, because I thought I would get away from whatever this was, because I had the feeling that whatever it was, it doesn't like to come to the city. I thought, because there's so many people around, there's so much electricity, that it makes it awkward for it to come here. And I thought if it was within me somehow that I was creating this myself, that I would be so distracted by all the things that there are to do here that it wouldn't bother me anymore. Well, it didn't work out quite that way, but I was able to distract myself a lot. There's a lot of distractions here that didn't stop. So through the years, this stuff kept reemerging, all this information, this stuff that had happened to me. And for some reason, I kept focusing on it. I kept seeming like it was important. Something important had happened, and I didn't know what it was, because I kept thinking that it was important, kept feeling it was important, but all the stuff all it did was scare me that I could remember. I was terrified of these things. And I couldn't figure out why I kept thinking about these things that scared me so much. You know, was I just, was a masochist? You know, was I just becoming, weirded out or something, that I like to just think about things that scare me? You know, and it wasn't until I think 1981 that I finally went to the group called MUFON down in Santa Clara to have a meeting.
Right. Captain's Father Board.
Yeah, Mountain View. Yeah. That. I reported that sighting that I had in 1977. At that time, it was 1977, May 1977. And I filled out a report form first, and then they invited me to the meeting to speak about the sighting itself. Because it was very close range. It was just like, it's right, as far as the house is from here. And so Dr. Haynes, who was a psychologist for NASA, and also the head of the psychology department at San Jose State, took me aside and interviewed me, make sure he didn't have a real wacko on his hand before that speak, and then asked me about the sighting. And then when I described it, he said, "Don't feel bad because I know a professor from San Jose State who's seen the same object that you have in the evening." He said it was over a mile long. It was off the coast of off the Pacific Highway as he was going down Highway 1 one night in the right at dusk.
Is he still there at State?
I don't think he is. I have his number. He's the story gets more interesting as it goes. He also has 3 students from Santa Cruz or from San Jose State, one of the two, saw something that sounds like the same object, he said, but they couldn't tell any detail. They said they could see the general shape because it blocked out the stars where they were. It's just this big black mass that blocked out the stars, but they couldn't see any detail to it. So and it was in the same time period that I saw this. So don't be so. It was crazy. So at the same time, I mentioned to him this dream that someone was in my mind with me, and also about this experience about being held down in bed. And I said, I didn't, even at the time, I had always thought them as just strange, uncorrelated events. I never thought of them as being any part of, one thing. And I asked him, I told him about this, and he said, "Do you think this means anything?" I says, I don't know what it means. He says, "But I think it means something." And he says, "Oh, gee, I don't know." At the time, he wasn't interested in abductees, which is not the case now. Now he's real into it. So this is back in 1981. This is long before Communion or Willie Screever or Bud Hopkins, when these people were, had written any books that's come out publicly about stuff. And so I just thought that I was crazy. Other people thought I was an asshole. I mean, all I did was talk about the sighting, but I did talk in private to him about the other stuff. I thought, well, he probably thought I was just nuts after this now. And so I went home feeling even worse. And I still had this feeling that there's something important, there's something I was supposed to find out about this. And I couldn't figure it out. Well, it wasn't until I saw Communion on the newsstand, on a book stand. I saw the picture on the front, and I was kind of attracted to it, and I thought, So I looked at it, and it was, I just read the introduction, it was a true story. And I thought, that sounds good, so I'll come back and get it sometime. And eventually, several months later, I went and got it and read it. And when I started reading it, I thought, my God, it sounds so similar to some of the ways I felt of things that, happened to me. And I didn't know for sure if it was, if it had anything to do with it or not. But I began feeling really tense that something about this had something to do with it. So I wrote Whitley a first 15-page letter, then a 25-page letter. And we wrote back and forth for a while, and he invited me to be on the Communion Network, which is a network of people who had experiences that may be abductees or were just supportive or something. And then I read Intruders by Bud Hopkins.
That's the second book, right?
That's his second book,
right?
Yeah. And I had never heard of Missing Time prior to that. And because I recognized the name from Whitley's book, Bud Hopkins. So I read that, and I thought, sound more and more similar to some of my stuff. So I called Bud up and asked him if he knew, told him my stuff that happened to me, and he says, well, it sounds, possible. He says, let's get you together with someone. So he gave me Kathy's number, and then we started working in hypnosis to see if potentially there was something to any of this stuff. Because I didn't necessarily think there had to be, but I was really, if you do meet other people, if you pursue this, I don't know if you're not interested in research or anything, but there's something about this that's so compelling for people who've had the experience that won't let it lie. You're being drawn to it all the time, and it's an evolving awareness of what's happened to you, and in your heart this is what's actually happened to you. Especially when I started going through hypnosis, the stuff that came out of hypnosis, the stuff that happened to me, was just really bizarre and very scary to relive, and very terrifying physically. I went through just as much physical fear reliving it as I did at the time. I mean, there's times where I was almost in convulsions from sheer terror under hypnosis. But usually at that point they would take care of it anyway. I mean, at the time when I was taken, they would come up. They have a thing of they'll come up if you're scared, you're panicked, or you're really frightened, if you're frightened, they'll come up and one of them will just touch you on the side of the head. As soon as it touches you, you just immediately have that euphoria. And you don't care who they are, you don't care where you are, you don't care what they do to you. You just feel good, just good. I mean, it's a great feeling. But it's kind of artificial in a way. When you think back on it, you think, well, maybe I wasn't so happy to be with them after all.
Right.
Sometimes I have suspicions like that. There's a lot of people who go, oh yeah, we were with them, but I was so happy when I was with them. Well, if they're pushing the right buttons, you probably were.
Right.
So you weren't terrified or scared of what they're doing.
When did you first meet Catherine?
About slightly over a year ago, I guess.
And then I guess it's been about 2 years since you wrote to Schreiber the first time?
No, not 2 years. I think it's about a year and a half.
Year and a half. So things have really picked up for you in the last year and a half.
It just incredibly. I mean, and it doesn't seem to make sense in a way because, like I said, this stuff is so seemingly destabilizing. And after hypnosis, I'm usually, if I go into hypnosis in a good mood, I'll be in a lousy mood for days afterwards, and I'll feel really, detached and strange and unpleasant and weird. But at the same time, everything else in my life has been coming together. And I was real overweight. I mean, still, stocky now. But I was like, I lost 55 pounds.
So Catherine mentioned
in like 3 months.
And you're working out?
Yeah, I work out. I go to the gym like 7 days a week, except for the day I put it off. But work at World Gym, and don't mention that because I'm sure they don't want the notorious connection there. But I feel like I'm in control now, and I don't know why it is. It's like for years I've been struggling with something that was completely unknown to me, and I kept putting the wrong labels on it, and it never made it any better. And I kept having this bizarre feeling about it, and this strange, compulsion about it. And it's like when this stuff started coming out, it's like bingo. It's like you guessed, it's like you guessed the $20 million question, and suddenly everything. It's like I had a pack on my back that suddenly I shed, and it wasn't really clear to me at first what was going on to me, subconsciously, but within several months it was. Something had changed. It was I had finally figured out what it was, and there's an effect this kind of stuff has on you when you've been picked up since childhood, when you've been grabbed by these things, and they take you off, and they do physically uncomfortable and sometimes painful things to you, and then tell you all kinds of nice stuff, or cheer you up, or make you feel positive, and then dump you off again, and then block it from your consciousness. I think, at least for me, I think I developed kind of a victim attitude about life in a way, and I don't know why, but I always felt like, well, where's it going to come from next, even though I didn't know this was happening. And the stuff that was happening when I was, in my late teens and 20s, kept making me think even more so that, Hold on just a second.
Okay, that was 37 minutes of Christopher, and I don't have the other part of that, and I apologize for the audio not being as great as it could be. Maybe Eric will be able to tweak that a little bit, see if we can punch that up. But it gives you a sense as to, I think, in a very intimate way. Again, you got to remember, this is 1988, and there is not a lot of hype around aliens and abductions. Contact by Strieber had come out,